Thank you very much, and a warm welcome also from my side to this afternoon and moving over to the topic of sustainability after having heard about AI in the morning and during lunchtime. I think when starting this sustainability panel, one could say, this sustainability afternoon, I have to admit I crashed the party immediately because I have to admit sustainability is dead. Sustainability is dead. Why do I say that? Well, because we need to reanimate the discussion about sustainability. And that's the reason why the title of my presentation today is called How Do We Make Companies Regenerative? Well, why do we need this discussion? Well, let's start with a point of departure. Point of departure is a little bit problematic. Although, we might start together with the story of success. Because when we look at our economic data over the last decades, it's clear that our story, the story of our economy worldwide, is a story of success. Never ever in the history of humankind we have had that high degree, that tremendous amount of material prosperity. And not only material prosperity, but also immaterial prosperity. We've traveled more than any other generation before. We've access to telecommunication, access to information. So in many, many areas, we could say we live in an era of more and more and more, and maybe also better, better, and better. But there is a problem related to that, and that is that all these products, all these services that we create, they are not made of simple air and love and whatever. They are made of materials, particularly energy. Oil, gas, coal, these were the resources of the past and still are the resources in the present that we need and use in order to transform other resources to make products, services, and so on. And using these resources, transforming resources, admitting into nature has led to a significant effect in nature. Similar to the development of our gross domestic product, of our products, the value of our products, we see several indicators in our environment which move in the same direction. The concentration of CO2 in our atmosphere, the acidification of our ocean, our surface temperature, but also terrestrial biosphere degradation. The amount of plants and species, insects, and so on our planet are tremendously in decline. But we might say, okay, yeah, that is a problem, but how big is that? Well, it's incredibly big because already today we live in an unstable and risky state of our global ecosystem. Why that? Well, first of all, because we use much more resources that our planet Earth is able to regenerate. Well, this planet is disposing of an ability that is incredible, and that is that every period, lots of resources, lots of parts of our nature is regenerating. Yeah, so that means we can take off something and it grows again. But we can also only do so and use this tremendous ability if we don't overuse it. That means going beyond the level of regenerativity of that planet. And we do that. 1.75 planets Earth we need currently around the globe. And that is, of course, only mathematical, right? We can only do this because we take out something that is then not able to recover. That means that every single year, our biocapacity is decreasing. So it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller every single year. And we can see the implications of that in our planetary boundaries. There is not only climate change as one of the big problems that we face in the context of the changes in our natural system, but also biodiversity, the quality of our soil, the freshwater supply that we have, and other novel entities that enter our natural systems, such as PFAS and other microplastic and other materials that we create in our economic system. And we can see the implications already today, bushfires, floods, And we already know that all these changes in our natural systems also have a social aspect. People are losing their areas where they successfully live. So it's always directly a social question and an economic question. Environmental crisis, ecological crisis are also economic crisis. More than 50% of our economy directly depends on nature. I mean, we can all agree, ultimately 100% of our economy depends on nature, right? But ultimately, directly, it is 50%. And 4 of the biggest threats for our economic system in the next 10 years are environmental threats, uncovered by the World Economic Forum. So we could say now, okay, now we know the problem, right? It is problematic how the state of our environmental systems are. So let's go to the solution. But wait, is that all really new? Is it something that we just have uncovered this year, last year, 5 years ago? No, not at all. It is something that we are talking about since decades, more than 50 decades. And the discussion about sustainability and sustainable development is at least 30, 37 years old. That's at least the date where the most common definition of sustainable development was, created, was agreed upon. It says sustainable development is a development which meets the needs of the present without compromising future generations to meet their own needs. And since 1992, almost all national countries around the globe have committed themselves to contribute to sustainable development. So since then, we have that compass. Since then, we try to do so. Now you might say, yeah, well, but if you look at marketing, if you look at sustainability reports, if you look at green products, sustainable products, they are increasing tremendously over the last decade. Right, that's the case. We are talking much more about sustainability. And that is good, but the bad part is, it's entirely disconnected of the things that are happening in our global ecologic system. It's not getting better. It's getting worse in many areas still. So we need to agree upon the fact that there is a big disconnect between company activities and the global state of the environment, of our ecological system. That is something that sustainability researchers from the natural sciences, but now slowly more and more from the business science departments are agreeing upon. Okay, so that means we need to find a way how the urgently needed reconnect between companies, between business and nature can take place. And how do we do that? Well, the first thing is to admit that what we have achieved in the past has not been, that we wanted to achieve in the past has not been achieved. We wanted sustainable development, but instead we followed a path of degenerative development. Every single year, the biocapacity of our planet has been decreased. That means that future generations, but also younger generations on this planet today, have much lower possibilities to live on this planet successfully. So that's the first thing that we simply need to understand. And from that, we must urgently achieve a net positive change. So to stop the decline in nature, to stop the degeneration in nature and move towards a thriving future. What do I mean with that? Going a little bit into details now. Well, when we look at what we have achieved in the past, what happened in the past, we have to admit that was degenerative development. So there was a net negative impact on the socio-ecological system, the way our economic system was run, the way companies worked. Yeah? And when we say we need something else, we need to move to a regenerative development, then that means that we give back more to nature than we take. We give more than we take. What do we currently do? Well, most companies, when we observe them from a sustainability research point of view, we see, well, they just comply with laws, but the laws are designed in a way that at the end, the result is a net negative impact. What do most companies do or actually achieve when they say that they act sustainably, when they say we offer sustainable products, when they say we offer green products? Well, actually, they have a lower negative impact on the ecosystem, which is good, but when we're honest, they are just less bad. Their impact is lower. They are less unsustainable, but are they yet sustainable? Well, sustainable, following the definition, would be to keep the current state, to safeguard our current state. So that means the impact on nature is net zero. But not only in terms of climate, but also in terms of biodiversity, fresh water, and so on. That would mean sustainable right now. And now I just showed you, okay, we have decreased our possibilities year by year in the past, so we need more and more companies that act restorative, that restore defective ecosystems, that do not provide currently all the services, all the possibilities that could be there. So we need more and more companies restoring something, or even improving the entire ecosystem, so being regenerative. Well, how do companies do that? Well, first of all, that overview at the end was an overview for an entire economy, a global economy that we need. The global economy needs to become regenerative. But for that, we need many companies that become regenerative. So a regenerative economy needs regenerative companies. What is a regenerative company? A regenerative company is a company that strives to maximize positive impacts on ecosystems instead of minimizing their negative side effects. They aim to improve and then maintain the health of socio-ecological systems through co-evolutionary processes with nature. What do we need for that? Well, we need companies that change their perspectives. That change their perspectives with regard to their relationship with nature. Well, what is our current understanding of businesses and nature? It is one of separation. There is a company and there is nature somewhere else. Yeah, we are separated from nature. And so the first part is to understand, well, we as a human, but we as a business also are embedded in nature. We are nature. Yeah? So we need living system thinking. We take something, we give something. We are adaptive to processes with each other. And with this understanding, this other point of view, we as a company take care that we understand the implications of our actions at the specific places that our managerial activities impact. And that is for many companies still very difficult at the moment, to really understand what is my impact on freshwater, on biodiversity, on the possibilities of my stakeholders along the value chain. But if we want to manage a company in a way that it creates net positive value, then we need to understand and manage our company in that way. But of course, not alone, but jointly with other stakeholders locally along the value chain, those that are addressed by our activities. And how do companies do that? And what are the criteria for regenerative business models then? Well, their impact is net positive. Their reflection is system-based, so they understand what the implication not only in single indicators are, so not only carbon, but also water, biodiversity, but also, of course, social aspects, well-being of my employees, well-being of people that play a role in my value chain and so on. And it is place-specific, and that is something that is really important. We all know that with regards to carbon, to CO2, it does not really matter, it's not entirely true, but it does not really matter where CO2 emissions take place. But when you think of biodiversity, your impact on forests, your impact on water, it is place-specific. So if you, for instance, in your value chain take palm oil from Indonesia, from Borneo, for instance, and you say, I want to become net positive also in biodiversity, and there's a great project in Brazil that I can do in order to take responsibility for biodiversity, that's not sufficient, because you negatively impact that specific place. So all the actions that need to happen need to take place at the specific place. Okay, that was rather theoretical, I guess, right? So I have brought a couple of examples intentionally from other industries in order to give you a clue in which direction to go. The first one relates to regenerative product design, regenerative material selection. So we all know that styrofoam is a problem, right? And the Ukrainian-based company S-Lab, they came up with the packaging solutions made to disappear. Within 30 days, the material made of mycelium agricultural waste simply disappears. So it is an option that safeguards the product that are shipped, but then you can just give it to nature once again. So it's a co-evolutionary process with nature. It's not against nature, it's with nature. That's regenerative product design. Regenerative supply chain design and partnerships. The German company Wildling from Western Germany was created 10 years ago with the idea of creating minimal shoes that help people to be active and to move the feet and regenerate, one could also say, the movability, the flexibility of people that used non-flexible shoes for a long time. And they said, okay, when we have a product that helps to regenerate our bodies, let's also apply that principle to our value chain. Let's select materials, let's create partnerships where we create net positive change. So they selected local farmers in northern Germany, which uses a very specific sheep breed, which is perfectly adapted to the German north coast. Specific ecosystems, specific plants there. So these sheep can do landscape protection very well and dike protection very well, but they have a problem. The color of their skin, of their wool, is gray. And that means it cannot be dyed, it cannot be colored by the textile industry. So it is a waste product. It's not used in the textile industry. And Wildling said, well, if that is waste, but on the other hand, it creates something positive, because when we invest in that, we invest in dike protection and landscape protection. Let's do that. Let's simply explain to our customers that this is wild wool. And perfect. So with that logic, they create net positive partnerships along the value chain. Third example, the company Interface creates floors everywhere. It's from the US, but also is operating in Germany and Europe and many other countries on this planet. And they produce floors based on mineral oil, basically, for a very long time. And then they said, okay, there's that topic of net zero. And let's move to that. Let's try to make our products and our processes net zero. But in doing so, they noticed, well, we could do more, right? Why should we stop when we achieve net zero? Why aren't we net positive? Why don't we create our factories in a way that they work as forests, where there is no waste at all? Why don't we create products? Why don't we create floors that sequester carbon along the production phase and during usage phase, and make them reusable and so on? And with this becoming net positive step by step. So these are the logics behind a regenerative company. I have a final example for you, the company Patagonia, which probably most of you know. It's not a company that makes everything perfectly already. I don't want to say that. But there is something very, very smart, I would say, that they have done. And that is to dedicate the entire operation, to dedicate the entire company, as they say, to save our home planet. They still have net negative impacts with some of their products, but they have a vision. They have a tool, one could say, to assess what they do with the overall mission whether or not what they do supports saving our home planet. They invest heavily in natural restoration areas to make Patagonia, but also other areas around the globe, more vivid, to regenerate these areas and to protect these areas. But that with the force of business, so to reconnect business with nature. All right, that leads me already to my conclusion and to an outlook. You probably notice what I presented to you seems, at least to some of you, still a little bit like a utopian vision of a regenerative economy, right? Some of you might say, well, that's far away. Can companies really do that? Yeah, and it is still far away, but that's a problem. Because ultimately, well, we cannot gamble with nature. We cannot gamble with this planet. We only have that one. And we notice that also the big players around the globe start working into that direction. Even companies like Unilever, Walmart, or Nestle, they understand that they have high risks along their value chains because they depend on nature. And if we forget that, and if we simply assume that, well, nature is something else, then we will get big problems. So we might ask, is that just a buzzword for them? I believe not, although we in research about regenerative economics, regenerative sustainability, understand more and more detailed and more complex things behind that. So we need to make sure that this is not used only as a buzzword, but instead as a new compass. We need to regenerate this planet. We need to reconnect businesses with nature. Thank you very much.